Well, I've been doing nothing but leak videos for this week, so let's finish it off with the AMX-30B, the tier 10 of the two new French medium tanks researched from the AMX-1390. So, French medium tank players rejoice because the D2 was crap, and the Lorraine 40T is basically a 5100 at tier 9, so ugh. But if you haven't watched my AMX-30A Prototype video from yesterday, I highly recommend you watching that one first, because I don't want to repeat myself with the history of the 30 series again, so kinda deja vu. Alright, so let's talk about the difference between the 30A Prototype and the 30B. Now the change is basically the shift from a 50 caliber machine gun, the coaxial machine gun, to a 20mm autocannon. So this gun could shoot down slow moving air targets like helicopters more easily. Could also kill people easier, obviously, but that's besides the point. It features a little bit bigger of a cupola with more periscopes, so more scouting, I guess. It also features a laser rangefinder and an infrared searchlight box thing. So this TV box is an infrared searchlight, always good. It features a better engine from 720 horsepower to 750. It features a better transmission, new torsion bars, and new shock absorbers. And during the 90s, it features a new reactive armor at the front, so it can go up to about 400mm of effective armor instead of the normal 80mm. So a lot of improvements were made to this tank. It is basically the M60 patent of the French army, and it was replaced by the Leclerc, or whatever you pronounce it, the French Abrams. So that's the analogy. Also, they make a lot of use about the chassis, the hull armor of this tank. So they develop a tactical nuclear missile launcher. Alright. So nuke launcher, that's always fun. They developed the anti-aircraft missile launcher and a 155mm autocannon artillery piece. So yeah, it was a popular tank for the French army. And it got exported to a lot of other countries, obviously, like Argentina and, other countries. So fun times ahead. And here are some in-game models for the AMX-30B. Now I put the AMX-30A Prototype at the bottom so you can see the difference between these two tanks, which is basically cosmetic, mostly. So the armor is pretty much the same. So you can see the 20mm autocannon, the infrared searchlight box thing. So these are pretty much cosmetics. The cupola is a little bit bigger, but still cosmetics. The machine gun on top, the 7.62mm, is also different, but yeah, it's pretty much cosmetic. So yeah, everything's cosmetic. Where is the 50 caliber? That's weird. Where's the 50 caliber MG? Alright, so here's the ass shot of the 30B. The engine deck is a little bit raised than the 30A, but we can see that later on. There's a toolbox thing to the back of the turret, which means nothing. So shooting at this means nothing, so poop. So you can see the 30A. So it only has the bristle rack at the bottom, or at the back of the turret. So yeah, engine deck is a little bit smaller than the ass end of the 30B. Alright, it's pretty much the same armor since it's the same tank. So alright, pretty much the same thing, pretty much. So here is the collision model, which tells a different story between the 30B and the 30A. Now you can see on the 30B, it has side armor right here that's jaunting out from the hull. So notice this side armor. Whereas on the 30A Prototype, there's no side armor right here. So the armor is a little bit wider on the 30B, so you can easily get shot at the sides and still penetrate. So that sucks. That really does suck, in my opinion, because you add more surface area to be shot at than your normal armor. So that sucks. But it has a little bit better armor at the strip, which is 100mm instead of 80, if you remember from yesterday. Also have the same mantlet, which is about 120, 130-ish millimeters. So you can still bounce a few shots. And it looks like we have about 100mm behind the mantlet instead of 80mm now. So that's good. So here are some more collision models. So side armor is still crap, about 50mm, 40-ish, 30-ish. so not that good. So this part is jutting out from the hull armor, which is bad in my opinion because you cannot side scrape. But then again, you're not supposed to be getting shot at or use this armor to protect you, so you're supposed to run away. So it's not that big of a difference, I guess. But it just makes more area for the artillery to shoot at you or something like that. So yeah, this cross section or cross-like hull armor is different than the normal section on the 30A, as you can see right here. So there's no cross section, but that's the major difference between these two tanks. The gun is pretty much the same. Alright. And here are the stats for the AMX-30B. Now it has 1900 hit points, which is kinda low for a tier 10 medium tank, but still around the same ballpark as the Russians or likely the French. Oh, it is French, so likely the same as the bad chat. Alright, it has 720 horsepower instead of the 750 horsepower, which it should have, so that sucks. It weighs 36 tons instead of 32 tons that's on the 30A, so these autocannons and searchlight and other stuff is adding to the weight, I guess. Power to weight ratio is still decent, 20 horsepower per ton, so it's still mobile. Top speed is 65 kilometers per hour. Reverse is 23, so still pretty quick. Now hull traverse got major buffed from the 30A. The 30A has 36 degrees per second. This tank has 48 degrees per second. So this tank actually could shift now and actually brawl, whereas on the 30A, it cannot really do that with only 36 degrees per second. So that's actually a very good plus. Terrain resistance is a little bit worse than the 30A, but that's still pretty decent. 0.86 for hard, 1.05 for medium, and 2.0 for soft. This is kinda sluggish in swampy lands, in my opinion. Anything above 2 is kind of rough. So if it was around 1.8, that would be good, but 2 is kind of a little bit overboard. So, alright. Turret traverse is a little bit slower than the 30A, about 40 degrees per second. So these junk are slowing down the turret, pretty much. It has 20 more meters of view range, which is good. That's one of the weak spots about the prototype. And the same radio, so above average, standard. Now hull armor is pretty much the same. 80 millimeters at the front, 35 at the sides, 30 at the rear. And turret armor is about the same. 80 millimeters at the front, 40 at the sides, and 40 at the rear. So armor is still crap, obviously, like the Leopard 1 and the Leopard Prototype. Now it carries the same gun, the 105mm, but it fires a little bit faster. So penetration is still very good, 260mm. Damage is the 390 damage per shot. Rate of fire is about 7 rounds per minute. You can increase this up to about 7.5 rounds with the gun rammer, vents, and crew. So DPM should be about 3,000 or so with a good crew and other equipments. So that's actually pretty good, very good DPM. Reloads about 8.1 seconds with all equipment and crew. Accuracy is very laser-like, 0.288. That's laser-like accuracy. That's pretty goddamn good. Aim time is also very good, 2 seconds, which is very important considering the accuracy. So if you consider the 30A, it has 2.2 seconds aim time and 0.31 accuracy. So if you want a snapshot with the 30A, it's not as easy as with the 30B. So it's better to snapshot with this tank. And gun depression is the 8 degrees from the 30A, so the turret is the same. So these stats are pretty good, pretty good. And now let's compare the AMX-30B with the Leopard 1, because both tanks were produced at the same time, around the same time, and performs the same functions. So these two tanks are pretty much the same, pretty much. Now armor wise, the Leopard 1 has better hull armor, obviously. It has 70mm at the front, but it's still peanuts in comparison to the chickpeas that's on the AMX-30B, because both tanks will be penetrated. Any tank they face, they will get penetrated. So yeah, armor wise it's not as good. But the AMX-30B has better turret armor because of the mantlet. The mantlet is about 130-ish millimeters with about 80 to 100 millimeters behind it. So the mantlet is actually better on the AMX-30B, whereas on the Leopard 1 you have only 65 millimeters of mantlet armor with nothing behind it, so the turret is not as strong as the AMX. So, alright, the AMX could go hull down if it needs to. Alright, now let's look at the other stats. It has 50 more health than the AMX, so the Leopard has more health. The Leopard also has more engine power, but it weighs more, so it weighs 4 tons more. But the power to weight ratio is a little bit better than the AMX-30B. However, if the 30B gets the 750 horsepower engine, historically, that will make the power to weight ratio more like the same. So, alright. Hull traverse is better on the Leopard, so the Leopard can turn better, but 48 degrees per second is still pretty good. So, it's not as good as 54 degrees per second, but still decent. Top speed is the same, reverse is the same. Terrain resistance is not as good as the Leopard, so this thing will get bogged down as opposed to the Leopard 1. So alright. View range is the same, has a better radio, but anything above 700 meters is pretty good. So anything above 600 meters is also pretty good. So alright. So basically it's not as mobile as the Leopard 1, but if going at a straight line, it's pretty much the same. Now let's look at the turret traverse. It has better turret traverse, so it could brawl if need to. So that's the advantage over the 30A Prototype. Now let's look at the guns. So it's the same 105mm, but the Leopard 1 is using the L781 Royal Ordnance, whereas this tank is using the German-made gun. So the guns are not that different, but penetration-wise, it's pretty much about the same penetration. 8mm off from each other, but that's not much. So damage is the same. DPM is only 60 off, so not as high damaging as the Leopard 1, but penetration is good between these two tanks. So yeah, gun is pretty much the same. Accuracy is the same, which is laser-like accuracy, but aim time is not as good as the Leopard 1. And has 1 degree less of gun depression than the Leopard 1. So this tank performs a little bit worse than the Leopard 1 at the cost or the trade-off of the gun mantlet with the turret armor. So basically you're trading some armor at the turret for better mobility and better accuracy aim time with the gun. So that's the Leopard 1's advantage over the AMX. The AMX has a little bit better mantlet and turret armor. So that's still pretty good for the AMX, considering it's basically the same as the Leopard 1, just with more turret armor. Now DPM is still pretty good for a tier 10 medium tank, so it's not as bad as the Batchat, because the Batchat is auto-loading, but that's mostly designed for burst damage instead of constant damage. This is a single shot cannon. It's not the same as the Batchat's 105mm auto-loader. So you can see on the Batchat. The Batchat has about 2,300 DPM, so whereas on this tank, yeah, it has way better DPM and way better penetration by 1 more millimeters. So alright, and better gun depression. Not as good mobility wise, obviously, and terrain resistance are also not as good, but it has 10 more meters of view range with turret armor. So alright, it's not a bad tank. I still like it, so it's not bad. It does have more armor than the Batchat, obviously. And the final verdict on the AMX-30B is that this tank plays a lot like the Leopard 1, but kinda underperforms than the Leopard because it has less health, less power to weight ratio, less hull traverse, more terrain resistance, which is bad, less penetration, less DPM, less gun depression, and more aim time. So you're trading all of that for better turret traverse, better view range, and most importantly, a good turret with some mantlet in front of it. So the mantlet is about 130mm with about 100mm behind it. So you can actually bounce a few shots if you go hull down, whereas the Leopard 1 cannot rely on the turret to bounce shots. So that's the trade-off. Now you can think about it this way. There are some tier 10 tanks which are good for clan wars, and you can see a lot of people use, like the Object 140 or the T-62A. So these two medium tanks are pretty good. the Leopard 1 is on the bottom of the list, whereas the FE4202 is the right bottom of the list. So if you're planning on playing Clan Wars with this tank, it's not as good. But if you're playing like pub matches or normal random matches, it's a pretty good tank. So it trades a lot of the stuff like mobility wise and penetration wise for a very good turret and mantlet for a medium tank. So that's the trade-off. But thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment below on what you think about these two new French medium tanks introduced, then the crappy D2 and the Lorry 40T. Ugh. But yeah, rate this video if you can. That always help me out a lot. But subscribe to my channel for more World of Tanks stuff. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.